Hi guys, Lori here with Sew at Peace. Today I'm going to be making a video. It's going to be probably a long process for me, not necessarily a long video because it's too much to film, but I've taken bits and pieces of the rag quilt process. So I've already started, I've already cut all my squares, and I will insert some footage of that. And so my sister-in-law, she asked me to make her a queen size rag quilt. So I've made several rag quilts over the years, but I have never made a queen size quilt. So it's a whole lot of fabric and definitely took a lot of time to figure out the calculations and how big I want to make everything. What I've decided on is 10-inch squares, and it's going to be 10 blocks wide by 12 long. I also did a little bit of experimenting as well. Normally when I make a rag quilt, I just do one flannel piece, or I'm sorry, I do two pieces of flannel. So one for the front and one for the back. It's not very hot here in Arizona, so I don't feel like batting is necessary. I know there's people that make it all kinds of ways. Some people just use regular cotton with like a piece of flannel, or they do cotton flannel cotton, or they do cotton batting flannel, or there's all these different variations that you can do. So I did a little experiment with this quilt. Normally when you do a block, you do an X. That's the typical way to do the rag quilts. This one I tried like a cross, so it makes like 4 little squares. I don't know if you can tell, but this didn't dry all the way in the dryer, so that's why it looks kind of weird. So what I did on this one, I put flannel in the front and then cotton. Well, I guess it just kind of depends on what side is the front, but basically this is just a regular piece of cotton, and then I put a poly cotton batting inside, and then I put the flannel. I guess it's really the back side, because that's what I wanted to experiment with, is seeing how the cotton did and how thick it is, because it's really hard to find cotton flannel now. In my experience, Joann's had the biggest selection of cotton flannel. So my sister-in-law wanted a fall themed quilt, and it's very difficult to find cotton flannel in fall colors and just cotton flannel in general, just like I said. So what I decided to do is something new to me. So I'm just going to do one piece of cotton on the front and then a piece of flannel on the back, because it's still easy to find cotton solids. So flannel is what makes it like more ragged, as you can see how that looks. And the cotton also rags a little bit too, but the flannel is really the one that rags the most. I decided just to skip the batting. I think it's a little too thick. So we're just gonna do the cotton plus the flannel, and we'll see how it turns out. But I'm pretty excited to try something new, and I also like that I can have more color options with regular cotton. Again, I'll insert my footage of when I cut all the fabric. I used a cutting machine that I had bought a few months ago when I first started my business. So I haven't used it too much, just because I was kind of worried about like the accuracy of cutting, but it worked pretty good. So I'm pretty excited with the outcome. I'll show you all of my squares. Well, this is part of it. So these are the squares that I still have to sew together. And then these are some that I've already done. I believe there's 30 blocks in here, so technically 60 squares. So the entire quilt is gonna be 240 squares that I cut for the entire quilt. And it took 18 yards of fabric, and nearly all the fabric is gone. Like there was very little salvage left over. Like literally the strips of fabric that are left are only like 2 inches wide, like 2-inch pieces. As far as the flannel goes, I think I had a little bit more left over for the flannel. So I got 9 yards of flannel plus 9 yards of quilting cotton. So I think I had more flannel left over because it was more of like a solid piece. So there was less waste, I guess, on the edges. I'm glad I got all the pieces cut. And another thing I want to do with this, because I don't sell rag quilts in my shop, quilts in general take so much time. I don't think I'd be able to charge what my time is worth to make a quilt. Well, I could charge it, but I don't think people would pay for my time. That's just my assumption. I don't know, but it's not something that I want to add to my shop right now. So what I want to do for my own knowledge to see how long it takes me to make a rag quilt this size. So every time I'm working on the quilt, I'm just gonna take down my time when I start and take down my time when I finish, just so I can get a general idea of how long it takes. So I will take you guys along, sew some squares with you guys, and I'll see ya. Also, I got my coffee from Dutch Brothers. So yesterday, not yesterday, I keep saying yesterday, but my birthday was a couple days ago, and I collected on my birthday drinks. So I always miss out on my drinks at Starbucks. They give you a free birthday drink, but you have to go on your birthday. So I made sure to go on my birthday. And then today I collected on my Dutch Brothers drink. And I'm also using my cup sleeve that I made. So this is the size large. I don't sell these on my website. I just sell these at the markets for now, but it fits this big cup perfectly. I usually don't get a large either. I usually get like a small or medium, but I thought I'd take advantage since it's free, any size drink, any additions you want. So I got the Bob Marley mocha. And this little experimental piece that I made for the rag quilt, it's now a coaster for me. So now I have 2 office studio coasters, which is perfect because I usually have like a coffee drink and a water while I'm working in here. Hi guys, I am here in my master bedroom. So I decided to come in here and lay out all the quilt pieces. So all 120 quilt blocks are done. So I have 6 different patterns and 20 blocks each. So I kind of wanted to do a random design. So if I do something like diagonally with the same pattern down and down, I think my numbers will be off, which is fine because I wanted to do something random anyways. I usually do some type of like coordinated quilt pattern, but I really love the look of a random quilt. So I'll lay out all the pieces and see how it's looking and see what we like. And then once we get the desired design, then I'll take a picture of it and then I'll collect each row or each column. Usually it's each row. So let's get started. All right, guys, this is the final result. So I think it looks pretty good. All the colors coordinate pretty well. I just made sure that none of the sides were touching, like of the same pattern. So I made sure not to put 2 of the same block together. Some of them are diagonal, which is fine. Ooh, I just noticed a spot where I have 3 diagonal. I'll probably fix that because I think 2 is okay, but I don't want it to look too much like a pattern. So I will fix that and then I'll take a picture of my layout. That way when I go to sew, I can make sure everything is lining up correctly. Okay, so I have collected all of my rows. So what I do is I gather all my squares from one row and then I just set them on my stack like crisscross. So each row gets placed on here crisscross. That way I know exactly which section goes to a row. So I'm going to put these aside so I don't get confused. And then I start from left to right because I am right-handed. I don't think I'm going to pin anything. Hopefully I don't get confused. So my very corner piece is going to be the scarecrow pattern. We're not going to put them right sides together. So since this is a rag quilt and our seams are going to be exposed, we want the wrong sides to be touching. So for the backing, I just picked this, it's called bone, I think, the bone color. So it's just a flannel backing. So we're gonna put these wrong sides together. Now I like to put my seam guide down sometimes because I don't want to forget what my seam allowance is, and it just makes everything easier. So we're just gonna do this first row on camera because there's so many. And then I usually just do a stitch length of number 2. And I always back stitch, so it's up to you if you want to or not. Some people don't, but I do because I have had things unravel. And I wouldn't want that to happen, especially on a gift. So we're just doing, I don't remember if I said, but we're just doing a 1/2 inch seam allowance. So if you have something that's directional, just make sure everything is going the correct way. Sometimes when you get caught up in your sewing, those types of things, slip your mind. So if you have a walking foot, you can put that on as well. I usually do have a walking foot on mine. I just forgot to put it on, honestly. But when I sew the rows together, I will put it on because it'll be a lot more layers that the foot has to go over. So you want to make sure that everything is collected evenly. But if you don't have a walking foot, that's okay too. My motto with rag quilts is they don't have to be perfect. You just remember the name of what you're making. It's called the rag quilt. So it does not have to be perfect. There is 1 row done. Woohoo! Now we just have 12 more to go. All right, so I have finished sewing all of my rows. So I'm just starting from the bottom since this was the last row that I did. It doesn't really matter, but again, just make sure all of your directional fabrics are going the same way. And I'm just going to line everything up. So we're going to do it the same way we did the rows. So we're going to put the wrong sides together. So we have exposed seams. So what you're going to do is just make sure that your seams line up. So if something's a little bit uneven on the edge, that's okay. You know, just make sure that your initial seam is lined up. These two look pretty good. All right, and then we'll just continue down this whole row. Once we're done with this and sew this row, then we'll move on to the next. All right, and then when we go and sew our pieces together on the sewing machine, we're just gonna do what's called nesting your seams. So we're gonna put one fold on one side and the other fold on the bottom on the other side. So this will just help to reduce the bulk. So if you have them both on the same side, it can get pretty thick with all those layers. So we're just gonna put them on opposite sides. So I'm gonna go ahead and sew these together. Okay, and then we're just gonna back stitch as usual. And I did go ahead and put my walking foot on after I did the first row because I just felt like it was necessary. Okay, and then as we come up to each seam, just double check that everything is laying the opposite way to reduce that bulk. Okay, we finished our first, how do I say this? We combined our first 2 rows, I should say. So the bottom, it's upside down, but it's the bottom 2 rows basically. So it will look like things don't align once it's sewn together because you nested your seams, but just have a little faith. Everything will look good once you clip everything and it's all done. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and continue with the rest of the rows and I will be back. Hi guys, I am back. So I finished sewing all of my strips together. So for the most part, well, I shouldn't say we're done because we're not done. We still have a lot of work to do, but all the blocks are sewn together. So we're very close. And the cutting part is the part that's gonna take a long time because it's a big quilt as well. So I just, I'm gonna try something different on this quilt. I brought in one of my quilts. This was my very first rag quilt that I've made. And I just realized that this quilt is over 10 years old. I couldn't remember exactly when I made it, but I saw a baby picture of my son a few days ago and this quilt was in there. So it put together the timeline of how long I've had this quilt. But as you can see on the edges, so a typical rag quilt doesn't have any type of binding. You just cut all the edges and the open seams. So this is what's happened over the years. And I just wanted to add a little bit more fluff to the edge. So as you can see, like where all these exposed seams are, it's a little bit more, well, it's a lot fluffier than all the exterior pieces. So I'm part of this group on Facebook. It's a rag quilting group. So you can get tips and tricks and see everybody else's rag quilts that they make. So I saw that somebody put a tip on there for a way to make the borders fluffier. So all she did was add a piece of flannel to the edges. So you're gonna sew a piece of your flannel. So this is just a 1-inch wide piece of fabric. So I had a bunch of scraps, or basically, yeah, a bunch of scraps left over from when I cut all the flannel pieces. And they were about 2 inches, so it worked out pretty good. So I just kind of sifted through them and cut all the strips in half, so they're about 1 inch. So I have a lot of these strips. I'm just gonna literally piece them together. So you don't have to combine anything. I mean, I don't think you do, as far as like connecting them and then sewing it on, just because everything is gonna be snipped. So you're not gonna be able to tell where everything starts and ends. So as long as you join them together, then it shouldn't be too noticeable in the end, because when you wash it and it gets ragged, it gets that ragged look, you can't tell. So again, rag quilts are very forgiving. So if things are not perfect, you're likely not gonna notice when the quilt is done. So this one is my quilt. I don't want to show you everything because I want to wait till the end to do the grand reveal, but I'm going to go ahead and just show you the initial stitching of the border. So I just want to get all the sewing part done. That way, when I'm relaxing in the evenings, I can sit at the couch and just snip away, because that's something that's mindless, that doesn't require a machine. So I get to spend time with my family and work at the same time. So it's a win-win. All right, I'm gonna put my pieces over here. Well, I can put some in here. Earlier I was sewing and all my stuff that I had on this end of the table was slowly making its way to the floor. So that was fun. But the quilt is just so big. I took it into my bedroom earlier and laid it out just to see how it looked. I know it's not like the final product, but I just wanted to get an idea of what it was looking like. Oh my gosh, I'm losing it. Okay, we'll start on a corner, but the corners are going to get snipped off. So the way that I saw the instruction was the corner gets cut off just like 1 inch or half an inch. I can't remember, but it gets cut off at a diagonal. So when everything's all frayed, it kind of has like a square to roundish look. So we'll just start here. And since everything is done with a 1/2 inch inseam, the way she did it was she ironed it so you could see the crease mark, but I'm not going to do that just because if I line it up to the edge, it's going to be at a 1/2 inch inseam all the way around anyway, so it doesn't really matter in my opinion. I can use this 1/2 inch guide here on my sewing machine, and that's going to help us out. All right, and I'm just laying all my seams down. You can open them up if you want. I'm trying to decide if I should open them or not. You know, I'm gonna leave them down. I'm gonna try it. Normally I open up my seams, but we'll leave them down. And I forgot to put this other piece in here right next to it, so I'm just lining it up to the end of the other one. I will say that some of my blocks didn't come out perfectly straight, and that was because I used the cutting machine. So that's kind of what my fear was in using it. It works great, but if you're doing something precise like an actual binded quilt with real intricate pieces, you probably don't want to use a cutting machine. I would stick to the rotary cutter. But for this, I wasn't too concerned about it just because it's a rag quilt. So again, it doesn't have to be perfect, but here you can kind of see where flannel piece extended from the cotton green piece. So what I was saying is when you join the pieces like this, it just looks like another cut. So when you have everything cut, it'll blend right in. All right, guys, so we're all done. So this is what I did with the corners. So I just literally overlapped them. I took this one all the way to the edge, and then this one, as you can see, is all the way to the edge as well. So what I'm gonna do is just cut off the very tip. So it's about 1/2 inch. So I'm not gonna get into those stitches. So we'll just eyeball it. And so we're just gonna clip all the corners. There's one. That one had a little bit of overhang. 3. And then here's the 4th one. So we're just cutting just a little bit off the edge or the corner. Then we get to begin the snipping process. So this is the fun part. Not really. Okay, so this part is probably going to take me a long time, like I said. So I just use these Fiskars. They're called Fiskars Easy Action Snips. So the first quilt I did, which was my pink one, I used regular scissors, and it is like super tiring on your hand. So these ones are nice because they're spring loaded. So it just makes it a lot easier. Plus the blade is a lot shorter. So it's not as awkward. You can really get in there and, you know, get a good snip. So what you're going to do, so just be careful along that corner. So you don't want to snip too close. You might have to like finagle some pieces just to get all the snips in there. But I usually do 1/4 of an inch snips. So I think that's 1/4. Maybe it's more like 1/2 inch, but you really should do 1/4. But they turn out looking okay when you do a 1/2 inch. So it's just, you know, obviously the more snips you do, the longer it's going to take to finish. But that's what I'm doing. So with this, oops, and I forgot to roll that up to the front, but just roll this piece that's hanging over, roll it up to the edge, and then start your snipping. So I'm just going back on this other area that I forgot. Okay. So like I said, you can just sit down by the TV or maybe help your kids with their homework or whatever it is that you can do to get this done. So I don't know what the measurements are, but I leave like a tiny gap. You just want to make sure that you don't get into the stitch line. So the stitch line is right there. And yeah, if you do accidentally cut your stitches, you can just put it over the sewing machine again and stitch it along a new little area, just a little bit deeper. It shouldn't be too noticeable. And then you're going to do all of these little areas in here. So we got a lot of work to do, but I will probably do the rest of this off camera because it's going to be quite boring and take a long time. So once I have everything snipped, I might check back in before I give it a wash. So we'll see. We'll see how I feel, or if I remember. Sometimes I forget to film certain things. But one thing I did notice with using the just regular cotton fabric on the front is it seems to like have a lot more fraying. I haven't even washed it, and there's like all these strings in the front. And I don't recall this happening with the 2 pieces of flannel, but whatever, it's going to be fine. We're going to wash it in the washing machine, and we're going to get more strings that come off, and we'll clean it up. Hi guys, Lori here. It is now day 582. Just kidding. It feels like it though. It's been a long time since I started the rag quilt. So I am all done cutting. So mostly done with the quilt. So the only thing that I have to do now is give my quilt a wash. Maybe a couple of washes and dries. It has a lot of lint on it. So I think I'm gonna try to shake it out a little bit outside and then throw it in the washing machine. So I do have somewhere to be. I don't know how messy it's gonna be, but I will give it a shot. I'll give you a quick look. And then once it's done washing and drying, then I'll show you guys what process I do after that. So I do have the quilt in my living room. I put it in my living room just so I have a big space to show you guys. So that's what it's looking like. I don't think I missed anything. I kind of looked it over last night, but it was kind of dark. So I'll probably just look it over just to make sure I didn't miss any spots, but this is it. So you can see how dirty it is. Well, it's not dirty, but it has like lint everywhere, like literally lint and strings. So that's just the process of cutting up your quilt. So it did take me 8 hours, if you can believe it. It was so long. And I must say, I do not look forward to making one anytime soon. So this will be my last one for a while. And yeah, so I'll check back in with you guys once it's washed. Hi guys, so I am back. I have washed and dried the rag quilt. So here it is. It's currently folded into 4s. So I am going to try to take off all these strings. There's a bunch of strings on here. You can see them. You should be able to see them through the camera. Some of them are pretty light on these dark colors. So I'm gonna show you what I do. You guys should have seen my dryer. I think I almost broke it. So you're supposed to clean it out several times while it's in the dryer for the first time. And I think I waited maybe 15 to 20 minutes before the first cleaning, which I should not have done because it was like really hot when I opened the dryer door and it smelled a little bit, and the lint catcher was so thick. Like it had so much lint on it, and I was a little bit worried. So I cleaned it out, and then I just let my dryer sit for 10 to 15 minutes. And then I went back and started it again once it cooled down. My dog's barking. So that's what I did. I cleaned it maybe 4 to 5 times throughout the cycle. So I only washed it once. So we're just gonna clean off all the lint. So far, I'm pretty happy with it, with the way everything turned out. Like it's got some nice fluff to it. So here's the edges. You can kind of see how the edges look where I added the extra pieces. So it just created a little bit more fluff on the edges. So I'll show you what this looks like compared to another rag quilt that I made, my very first one, without the trim on it. But I'm gonna go ahead and get started on cleaning this. And the tool that I used to use just like a lint roller. So I cleaned my couches with this. That's why it has all this lint on here. But I ended up just vacuuming my couch because it was so bad. So bad. So I might go over at the very end with this lint roller, but the last rag quilt that I made, I found that this little tool here, it's for cleaning dog hair off of your couches. This works really well. So this will save you some money. Obviously, every time you use one of these, you use some money, and then this, you just got to clean it off. So I'm gonna go ahead and start scraping this and you guys can watch. All right, so that is actually pulling some of the threads. It didn't do that the last time I made a quilt. So I'm just gonna try, this bottom edge feels a little bit flatter or more smooth than like the sides here. So I'm gonna just work with this bottom part, if you can see that. Yeah, I don't feel anything scraping weird, so I'm just gonna continue this way. All right, so if you notice anything that didn't quite fray enough, or maybe you missed a spot, you can go back and just give it a snip while you're cleaning it off. It'll fray more the next time that it's washed. Hi, son.
Grandma's here.
Okay. I love you.
Love you too.
Be safe. All right, guys, I finished lint rolling the whole thing. So I ended up changing to this sticky roller because this was lifting up my stitches that I sewed in the middle, like with the X. It was picking them. Luckily, I was able to like save it by stretching the fabric a little bit. It kind of evened the stitch back out, but I'm gonna try this on the back side since there's no, actually I lied. Yeah, no, never mind. There are stitches on the back side. So I'm just gonna lint roll the back side and I'll do that off camera. Hey guys, I am back. So I have finished the rag quilt completely. So I just finished it off by lint rolling the last of it, front and back. So that took quite a bit of time, but I'll show you. I can't unfold the whole thing and show you because my arms are just not that long. So I'm gonna show you just a couple of the sides. So there is one side. And everything is random, so the pattern will not look the same. Oh, let me show you this way. And then here's the other side of that. So this is folded in fourths. So I'll give you a closer look of the edges here. So let's see if you can see that. Okay, so here are the edges. So I just added that extra trim on here and it did make the edges a little bit fluffier. So I do like the look of that. And don't mind my mess if you can see that. Here's a little close up. So again, everything's just really random. And you know what I just noticed? I didn't want two colors to be right next to each other, but I do have two greens that are that are next to each other. Oopsies. Well, that's all what gives a handmade quilt character, right? It's not going to be completely perfect. And then here's my rag quilt that I made years ago. I don't even remember how long ago, but this is the first one that I made. So it's still hanging on and this is what the edges look like. So I did not add the extra trim on here, as you can see, and it's worn down like literally to the stitch line here. So here is that one. You can see the whole thing there. I put some strips in here so it's not just all blocks. So that's my original one. And I want to do a recap of exactly how long it took me to do this whole rag quilt step by step. Just because I know when I was first getting started on doing the rag quilts, I didn't know how long it would take me. And it's just kind of nice to have a breakdown of every step. It could help you, maybe you don't care, but I'm gonna share that information with you. So I took notes every time that I worked on the quilt, if I was sewing or cutting, ironing, every step along the way, I wrote down my time or put it in my phone just to document it. So you begin with iron and cutting. So ironing and cutting is very important, obviously, to get yourself the most accurate cuts. So that step took me 3 hours. And the next step was sewing. So this is sewing all the blocks and then sewing all the blocks together. So the total time spent sewing was 11 and a half hours. And then the planning process. So planning was when I laid out everything, created my pattern, how I wanted each block to be staggered. That took me an estimated 30 to 40 minutes. So these are not completely 100% minute, seconds, whatever. It's not that precise, but it's a very good estimation of how long it took. So that whole planning process took me 30 to 40 minutes. And then the cutting process. So I did the cutting in the evenings when I had time, or when we went on quick little trips out of town. I took the blanket with me and worked on it then. So the total time spent cutting was 8 hours. So that was a very long time. I was very surprised by that. I did not realize it would take me that long to do. And then the next step was lint rolling. So the lint rolling, trying to get everything off of here, took me about 30 minutes. So I'm still finding stuff. I went through the whole thing, but these rag quilts, they will shed for the first few washes. And even after that, my pink quilt that I just showed you, that one still sheds to this day. So just a little FYI, just because of all the little cuts and wear and tear and all that. So yeah, cutting took me 8 hours. So the total time spent on this entire quilt, 23 and a half hours. So I'm very surprised by that. And I'm glad I did that. I'm glad I documented the whole process, just because it kind of gives me a good idea of how long it's going to take me. Obviously, if I want to make another quilt in the future, another rag quilt. So obviously with a regular quilt, it's not going to be as long because you are not going to be snipping all the edges. So the snipping alone took me 8 hours. But I mean, there are other steps in doing a regular binded quilt, but I'm just sharing with you how long it took me to do this rag quilt. So it also will give me a good baseline if for some reason I would like to make these and sell them in the future, which I am almost certain I will not, just because how long it took. Making like a lap size throw quilt, it takes quite a few hours, but nowhere compared to the amount of time that I spent on this quilt, just because it's a queen size. So let me measure it actually, because I forgot to measure it just to see what the final dimensions are. And this is just a rough estimation because I do not want to lay out this whole thing. I've already washed it, so I don't want to put it on the floor. Okay, so it's about 45 inches this way. So that gives me my 90-inch width that I had planned on. And then it should be somewhere around 100 lengthwise. Yep. So we're sitting at about 100 inches. So it was 90 inches wide by 100 inches in length. So I hope you learned something from this video and you found it helpful. If you did, I'd appreciate it if you gave me a like and subscribe. And I hope you have a joyful and peaceful day.